Hello and welcome to another video from the only source of information that you need to not only survive the current apocalypse but actually enjoy it. And today's video is going to be about the riots. And obviously for those of us who live in the United States, what's important is the riots that are happening in this country. And from what I understand, they're rioting in Minnesota, Minneapolis, and Atlanta, and probably some other places I don't know about. I don't really watch the news. I get bits and pieces of it off the internet if it catches my eye, but so much of what goes on in the world is colored by the news. They make it appear as if somebody's a bad guy and somebody's a good guy to get the whole point is to get everybody involved, and it's not a good idea to be involved. In case you are not aware of what happened, some police officer killed somebody. The man was in police custody, and he died, which is a common thing. It happens many times a day. It's somewhere in the world. But what makes this unique is that it was videotaped, which is getting more and more popular. Nowadays, if you're doing anything anywhere, and what you're doing is out of the ordinary, somebody somewhere is going to videotape you because, everybody has a video recorder. They when you buy a telephone, they give you a free video recorder, with your phone. And so, they've actually, in order to try to keep the peace, different jurisdictions are enacting laws to make it illegal to film a policeman committing a crime. Which, although it may not make any sense, the evidence, the proof is out there that right now millions of dollars of damage are being done because somebody videotaped a police officer committing a crime. Now it's really difficult, no matter who you are, if you're a human being, to want to help those that are being victimized. So, okay, we've got this man who was victimized. He lost his life because of some bully with a little bit of power, and so you may want to participate in the riots. But then there's other people that say, well, look, these people that have these businesses that are being burned to the ground, they didn't kill that man, and so they're going to go out there, and it's these like ex-Marines or something, guys that are covered in tattoos and toting AR-15s, wearing body armor, you tough guys, posers. And, they've got a point. But the fact is, the people who own those businesses need to be protected. That man who was murdered needed to be protected, but we can't do it. The problem is not that police officer. The problem is not the rioters. The problem is civilization, but we, in general, everybody has pretty much entered into a covenant with Satan. Here's your choices: live by God's law or live by Satan's law. And this has been going on for thousands of years. It's recorded in the Bible. And Satan's law is basically the law of the land. You have a job, you get paid, you live on land, you pay taxes, you vote for your next ruler, you get a credit score. All of that nonsense. Some of us are forced into that to some extent. We need to eat to live, and so we do things to eat. But then other people embrace it. They achieve great things in society. They become politicians or lawyers or soldiers or policemen when they're given choices to do other things that don't pay as much money. I've always made those choices. Whatever is the least harmful to my fellow man, that's what I'm going to do. And as a punishment for that, I spent 30 years making minimum wage and working all the time, 70 hours a week for minimum wage. And that's the price I paid for choosing God's law. But there are benefits to God's law too, and those are coming right up. So you need to know that if you're out there trying to protect somebody, you may be protecting the wrong one, because this is divided up into rioters versus police, or versus the establishment. Well, in some ways the rioters are right, some ways they're wrong. The establishment, in some ways it's right, some ways it's wrong. And so if you go out there and fight the police, it's not the police that are wrong. It's the policemen who commit murders that are wrong. And you can't make things, you cannot correct a policeman who commits murder by murdering a policeman that had nothing to do with it. You know, that's the way all wars are fought. Some people blew up some buildings in the United States a few years back, and so the solution to that was for the United States to exterminate 10 million people, maybe? 10 million people who had nothing to do with that were exterminated as a punishment for some bankers getting their buildings blown up, which actually no one should care about that. Well, anyways, if you go back in the Bible, this the thing that people are fighting for is freedom. You know, everybody says we're fighting for freedom. You ask them for freedom for what, and they'll say, well, you know, if you live in this country, you're free. Well, explain. You know, please explain to me, how's living in this country make me free? Because they're telling this to everybody in every country. So, you know, the people in the Middle East, they're fighting for their freedom right now. And they're fighting against Americans who are over there in their country fighting for American freedom. Back in the very, very ancient past, earliest books of the Bible, the two characters we often think of is Adam and Eve, and, three characters, Satan. Satan approaches Eve and says, is it true that God's oppressive and you can't eat the fruit from trees? And they said, no, we can't eat fruit from that tree or those trees, but we can eat fruit from these trees over here. And Satan's like, well, that's just oppressive. And Eve says, well, if we eat from these trees, we'll die. Satan's like, no, that's not true. What you need to do is declare your freedom from God and break His rules. Because as long as you're following His rules, you're a slave. So you want to break His rules. And that's what she did, and that's how all of this came about. So, I mean, that is the story, and it's not just the Bible story. Pretty much every ancient story from the past is about this incident. And so, if you're free from one thing, you become enslaved to another. And what we're enslaved to right now is civilization. Doesn't mean we need to embrace it, but we just have to recognize that that's where we are. Now, when civilization began, the clock began to tick, and we're almost near the end of civilization. Now, I've already told you, you can't fix this by getting involved in a war, you know, good guys against bad guys, because they're bad guys on both teams. You really should just take a stand against wickedness. And if you're going to take a stand against wickedness in this world, you simply have to not get involved in any of it. When the Israelites were brought out of Egypt, they were given this natural law enumerated. It was actually given to them in writing. And in our English Bibles, it's really difficult to understand what that law is. It's called the Ten Commandments. And so there's all kinds of, it seems like sex rules and property rules and all that written into the Ten Commandments. But basically, if you go back and look at it in original Hebrew, it's basically just eat food that's for humans, don't eat food that's not for humans, love your neighbor, don't kill your neighbor, don't steal your neighbor's stuff, make sure nothing bad happens to the plants and animals. And the Israelites were like, yeah, we like that. You know, we've been oppressed by the Egyptian Empire, now we're out here. Let's live by natural law. So Moses went up and got these 10 Commandments. God created these stones. He carved into the stones the 10 Commandments. Moses brought them down, and we get down to the bottom of the mountain. The Israelites were worshiping a metal animal. You know, it was a calf, a golden calf, a piece of stuff. Which, obviously, if you look at what the Ten Commandments say, it's basically live a natural life. And there's nothing natural about a human being bowing down to worship an effigy. So Moses broke those commandments, and as part of the deal, God said, well, here's how we'll work this out. Come on up and I'll give you a second law. And so he did. And when he brought him the second law, he asked the Israelites, do you want this? Is this what you want? And they said yes. They all said with one voice, yes, we want to live by a legal system. We don't want to just, you know, live and let live. We want rules and regulations. We want a hierarchy. And so God says, well, if we're going to if you're going to have this law, it's going to require that you kill your sons and your brothers, which is what war is. He said that, because if you look at the Ten Commandments as they were given to Moses, they said things about if somebody commits this crime, you stone them, and if they commit this crime, you stone them, and if you go into a land and there's people already living there, you have to go to war with them and kill them and kill their animals, and when it says you got to kill your brothers, those are your brothers. When the Israelites went, literally it was, when the Israelites entered the Promised Land, these were their relatives that got left behind when they entered into Egypt. So they were actually going back to kill people they were related to. Well, earthwide, we're related to everybody, so that's how civilization works. You have to murder your sons and your brothers. And so he said, well, if you're going to have this law, somebody has to be responsible for, meting out the punishment. Levites said, we'll do it. And that day they exterminated 3,000 of their friends, their brothers and their sons. Now, people in churches, they say, well, that was to get rid of the bad people, the people who made the golden calf, that worshiped the golden calf. Well, Aaron wasn't punished. He's the one that made it, and Aaron was a Levite. When you think about it, the Levites were given the job of killing everybody who was bad. And so who would they kill? They would kill the people who were not involved in the worship of the golden calf. They weren't there to defend God's law. Remember, God's law is natural law. The Levites were there to defend civilization's law, the law of Moses. I did a video a while back called God's Law and the Law of Moses. You need to go back and look at that, because it explains in a lot of detail what I'm telling you today. So here we are. The world is getting really strange. It's not like the world is actually getting more evil, but for years and years and years, human beings have gone across Satan's imaginary line to murder people on the other side for freedom. That's the whole thing. And the people on the other side are coming on this side to murder people for freedom. And we're not free, like, the basic understanding of what freedom is. All we're free from is God. We're free from God's rule. When we make our own rules, we're showing God that we're free of His oppressive dictatorship. Well, you don't want to be free of God's rules. You don't want to participate. It's not just joining the military or becoming a policeman or becoming a politician that's bad. It's supporting those people or fighting against those people. Anything that you do to try to make civilization better is evil, because civilization is evil. It's not the bad part of civilization that God doesn't approve of. It's civilization in general that God doesn't approve of. If your heart goes out to these people and you see one of them, tell them you love them. Don't go try to burn down some kind of a department store or public office or anything like that. And don't go out in the street toting around a weapon to defend department stores and public buildings. Just stay away from it. Right now they're having a pretendemic where millions of people in nursing homes with cancer and heart disease and diabetes are dying, just like they always die. But when they die, they call it COVID-19. And they post the numbers every day. 1 million people have died of COVID-19. A zillion people have died of COVID-19. Wouldn't surprise me to find out that a lot of those people who died of COVID-19 were in automobile crashes or airplane crashes, drowned. Because this is just getting nonsensical. There is money, government money being passed around for all the victims of COVID-19. So everybody wants to have COVID-19 victims so they can get paid. So yeah, the numbers are going to be elevated, but at the end of the year, the same percentage of people who died last year, that's the percentage that's going to die this year. But last year they all died of cancer, heart disease, diabetes, and car accidents. This year they're all going to be declared victims of COVID-19. That's really weird. It's unprecedented. It's kind of unprecedented when you think of how they're doing it. In the past, they had what's called sabbaticals and jubilees, which is all this is. This is just another satanic sabbat. It's part of that wicked law. the law by which no man could live, the law that God gave to the Israelites when they rejected natural law. And all I'm telling you is that if you want to be on a team, be on God's team. God's team is for natural law. Natural law is that we live and let live. Civilization's law is where it's our responsibility to make the world a better place by fighting for freedom. That's it. Take it easy. Stay safe. Don't get involved. We've only got a short while left before civilization is gone forever, and these types of things will not even be an issue. Love y'all, and if you don't want to survive, don't listen to me.